He banned me from his wedding, the wedding I paid for with 30 years of sweat and sawdust. He said I didn't fit the aesthetic. He thought this old contractor was just a worn-out checkbook. He was about to find out I don't just build houses. I demolish them too. The smell of sawdust usually calmed my nerves. It was the scent of my life. I'm Thomas. I'm a builder. It's honest work. It built the home I shared with Mary. It paid the bills when she got sick. I wiped the grease from my hands, locking up my workshop. Exhaustion was a heavy blanket. 3 jobs, juggling them all, trying to refill the savings Mary's illness had drained. But it was worth it. My son Michael was getting married. I pictured him at the altar, proud. My boy, if you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this crazy world. Because that night, I felt more alone than ever. The air in the grand ballroom was too thick, too sweet. Imported lilies and expensive champagne. It was the smell of money. It should have signaled celebration. Tonight, it just made my stomach tight. I tugged at the stiff collar of my rented tuxedo. It felt like a noose, scratchy, cheap. I felt utterly out of place. This wasn't my world. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. Waiters glided past, carrying trays of wine that cost more per bottle than I paid my crew for a week's labor. I'm used to the smell of sawdust and concrete. Honest sense. I looked down at my hands. Calloused, stained. They didn't belong here. But I told myself it didn't matter. I was here for Michael. My son. My only child. I thought I was doing the right thing. I was so wrong. I watched Michael across the room. He looked handsome, so grown up. He was laughing, his hand resting lightly on the arm of his new wife, Jessica. He looked happy, but his eyes darted around the room, nervous, like he was waiting for something to go wrong. Or maybe he was just making sure everyone saw him. Jessica was a vision, white lace and diamond, shimmering under the lights. She was beautiful. I couldn't deny that, but her beauty was like the massive ice sculpture centerpiece. Stunning to look at. Cold to the touch. And I was the one paying for the ice, paying for everything. This wedding, this extravagant spectacle. It had cost me nearly everything. Jessica had a vision, she often said, a vision of perfection. And Michael, blinded by a love that seemed more like obsession, wanted nothing more than for Jessica to be happy. So I did what a father does. I signed the checks until my hand cramped. I thought I was building their future. I didn't realize I was dismantling my own. It started small. Or at least it seemed small at the time. The venue deposit, $15,000. It's the grand ballroom, Dad, Michael had said, excitement in his voice. Jessica says it's the only place that fits the aesthetic. Aesthetic. That word would come to haunt me. I wrote the check. What else could I do? Then the dress fittings in New York. The specialized catering tastings. Caviar and things I couldn't pronounce. The costs spiraled. Quickly, aggressively. It wasn't just the wedding anymore. They needed a place to live. A house that reflected their future status, as Jessica put it. Status. Another word I grew to hate. She found it in a new gated development. A massive house with a grand staircase and more bathrooms than residents. It was cold, empty, soulless. When she showed me the listing, the price tag made me dizzy. Michael, this is astronomical, I said. My voice strained. Jessica just smiled, a pitying look. Thomas, you don't understand the market. This is a starter home for people in our circle. Their circle. A circle I clearly wasn't part of. To make the down payment happen, I did the unthinkable. I liquidated the savings account Mary and I had built over 30 years. Our retirement, our safety net. I remember the feeling of the wire transfer going through, a cold dread settling in my stomach. 30 years of work. Every early morning, every late night. Gone in a second. But that wasn't the worst part. It still wasn't enough. It was never enough. I took out a second mortgage on my own home. The small, sturdy house Mary and I had fixed up together. The house where Michael took his first steps. I sat in the living room. Mary had painted yellow, her favorite color, and I signed the papers. The ink felt like blood. I felt like I was betraying her memory. selling our past to fund their future. The costs kept piling up. The wedding planner, the specialized lighting, the designer furniture for the new house. I couldn't keep up. I was drowning. I had to sell some of the heavy equipment from my construction business. My excavator, my backhoe, tools I needed, my livelihood. I watched them being hauled away on a flatbed truck. It felt like losing a limb. These machines were how I provided, how I built my legacy. Now they were gone, sacrificed for imported orchids. My business partner, David, watched with me. His face was grim. David was my oldest friend, the only one who knew the full extent of the damage. "Don, this is madness," David said, shaking his head. He kicked a loose stone in the driveway. "You're bleeding yourself dry." "It's for Michael," I repeated. The words sounded hollow, weak. "It's for Jessica," David corrected, his voice sharp. "And she doesn't appreciate it." "She doesn't appreciate you." "She sees a checkbook, not a father." I knew he was right, but I couldn't admit it. Not yet. Admitting it meant admitting I had failed my son. Back in the ballroom, I touched the worn leather of my wallet. Inside, behind my driver's license, was a small, faded picture of Mary. She was smiling, squinting into the sun. "We did it, sweetheart," I whispered under the noise of the jazz band. He's married, but a profound sadness washed over me. This wasn't what she would have wanted. Mary had a gentle wisdom. She always said that entitlement was the rust that corrodes the soul. Looking at Jessica, shimmering across the room, I realized she was covered in rust, and the corrosion was spreading to my son. The tension had been building for months, and I had ignored every warning sign, every red flag. Jessica took control of everything. My opinions were dismissed, my suggestions ignored, my budget concerns were laughed at. I was outdated. Or her favorite word, cheap. It started with the flowers. I suggested Mrs. Gable, the local florist. She did beautiful work. Mary loved her arrangements. "Thomas, we simply cannot use local florists," Jessica told me weeks ago. We were touring the venue. She looked at me as if I had suggested decorating with weeds. "Why not? She's reasonable is not the goal," Jessica sniffed, examining her perfect nails. "We need imported orchids from Thailand. Anything less looks cheap." Cheap. The word stung. A judgment on my entire life. Then the invitations. I found a printing service that offered a good deal, good quality paper.
"Nice designs." Thomas, Jessica sighed, exasperated.
"The invitations need to be hand-engraved on Italian paper. Not printed." She picked up the sample I brought like it was contaminated. "Printing is tacky. Tacky. Cheap." Words she used to describe my life. My work. The very things. Funding her dream. I wasn't treated as a father-in-law. I was an ATM. An ATM that dispensed cash with an annoying amount of opinions. I tried to talk to Michael about it. To warn him. To make him see what was happening. I even brought up the warning from his Aunt Clara, Mary's sister. A woman who saw the world clearly. Clara had called me a month ago. Frantic. She had met Jessica at the bridal shower. "Thomas, you have to stop this," Clara pleaded over the phone. Her voice was tight with worry. "That girl, she's poison. She's draining the life out of him, and the money out of you." "Clara, she makes him happy," I argued, defending my son, defending my choices. "She reminds me of an old friend," Clara insisted. "A woman who ruined her husband's life. The greed, the entitlement. The constant need for more. It's all there." Clara paused. "I told Michael this. He told me I was being dramatic. He said I didn't understand their lifestyle. I ignored her warning too. I thought she was just being overprotective. I should have listened. Clara was always right. I tried to talk to Michael at my workshop. The smell of sawdust hung in the air. "My sanctuary. Son, the costs are out of control," I told him, leaning against my workbench. "And the way Jessica treats me, it's not right. It's disrespectful." Michael looked uncomfortable. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He kicked at a pile of sawdust, a habit he had since he was a boy. "Dad, Jessica's just stressed. She has very specific tastes." "Specific tastes are one thing, Michael," I said, my voice strained. "Disrespect is another. Financial ruin is another. I'm leveraged to the hilt, son. Don't exaggerate, Dad, he snapped, suddenly defensive. His tone was sharp, cold, like hers. You said you wanted to help. Are you taking it back now? Are you trying to ruin this for me? The hurt must have shown on my face. I'm sorry, he mumbled, looking away. Please, Dad, just let her have this. It's her day. I backed down. I always back down. I was a coward, but then something strange happened. Something that shifted my perspective. I got a call from Mr. Evans, the manager at my bank, a man I'd known for 20 years, a man of integrity. Thomas, I just wanted to check in with you, Mr. Evans said, his voice cautious. Formal. We received some unusual paperwork regarding the new property, the one you co-signed the loan for. Yes, what about it? I asked, confused. The closing was supposed to be next week. It was a request to expedite the deed transfer, Mr. Evans explained. He cleared his throat, to put the property solely in Mrs. Jessica Smith's name, before the wedding. Before the closing, my blood ran cold. Solely in her name? The house I paid the down payment for, the loan I co-signed. Did you authorize this, Thomas? Mr. Evans asked quietly. He knew the answer. No, I whispered, the word catching in my throat. No, I did not. I didn't think so, Mr. Evans sighed. I flagged it. It seemed predatory. I apologize for the term, Thomas, but I felt you needed to know. Predatory. It wasn't just unusual. It was theft. Attempted theft. A calculated move to cut me out. I confronted Michael about it. I drove straight to his apartment. He looked terrified when he opened the door. He knew why I was there. Dad, it was a mistake, he stammered, backing away as I walked in. Jessica's lawyer drew up the papers. They misunderstood the arrangement. It was just a precaution. Lies. I could see it in his eyes. The fear. The shame. He knew exactly what she was doing, and he let it happen. He was protecting her. That was the moment the cracks in the foundation started to show. The realization that this wasn't just extravagance. It wasn't just entitlement. It was manipulation. Cold, calculated manipulation. And my son was an accomplice. The day of the wedding arrived. I stood in the ballroom, a stranger in a rented suit. Knowing the truth about the deed transfer made the whole event feel like a mockery, a celebration of deceit. I circulated the room during the cocktail hour, trying to blend in, trying to feel the joy I was supposed to feel, but the knowledge sat heavy in my stomach. I saw David near the bar. He gave me a small, sympathetic nod. He knew I was struggling. Are you holding up, Tom? David asked, gripping my shoulder. His grip was firm. Real. It's a beautiful event, I said, forcing a smile. The words felt like ash in my mouth. It's a monument to excess, David muttered, sipping his scotch. Just remember you did your part. More than your part. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he just shook his head. He was thinking I was a fool. I noticed Michael talking to a distinguished older man near the entrance. Mr. Harrison, the senior partner at Michael's new firm. The man they were trying so hard to impress. The reason for the status. Mr. Harrison was looking at Jessica with an expression I couldn't quite read. It wasn't admiration. It looked more like pity, or perhaps disdain. I wondered if he saw the truth behind the facade, the greed beneath the glamour. I moved away, seeking a quiet corner. The noise was too much. The laughter too loud. I needed a moment to breathe, to contain the anger simmering beneath the surface. I found myself standing near a pillar, admiring the architecture, old-world craftsmanship, solid, built to last. Unlike the marriage I was witnessing, that's when I heard it. Jessica's voice, sharp, cutting through the polite chatter like a buzzsaw through pine. She was talking to her mother, Mrs. Smith, a woman who always looked at me like I'd tracked mud onto her expensive Persian rug. They were partially hidden by a massive floral arrangement. The imported orchids, their voices carried. And what I heard next shattered the last illusion I had left. I just wish he'd make an effort, Jessica was saying, her voice low but venomous. Effort? I sold my life for this. I almost lost my house for this. Did you see his suit? She continued. It's clearly a rental, and it doesn't even fit right. My face flushed. I tugged at the sleeves. It was the best I could afford. After paying for her dress. It's embarrassing, Mother, Jessica hissed. We have very important people here tonight. Mr. Harrison is here, and his father is walking around, looking like a handyman who crashed the party. A handyman? The words hit me like a physical blow. My identity, my pride, used as an insult. He is a handyman, dear, Mrs. Smith, sipping her champagne. The sound was dismissive, final. Well, tonight he's the father of the groom, Jessica retorted, and he's ruining the aesthetic. The aesthetic. My presence, my sacrifice, ruining her perfect picture. I told Michael we should have just eloped and asked for the cash, Jessica said, but he insisted on this big performance. Cash. That's all I was to her. A transaction. Not a person. Not a father. I swear, I don't even want him in the professional photographs, she concluded, her voice cold. Clinical. I held my breath, waiting for the final blow. We can Photoshop him out later. My stomach tightened into a cold, hard knot. The blood rushed to my face. Photoshop me out. Erase me? Is that all I was? Is that embarrassment? A stain on their perfect day? A glitch in the photograph? I stepped back into the shadows, my face hot with shame, and a rising, unfamiliar tide of cold anger. I wasn't just hurt. I was insulted. Deeply. Profoundly. They didn't just want my money. They wanted me gone. And I finally realized they were never going to stop taking until I stopped giving. The ceremony itself was a blur. A performance. Michael looked nervous. His eyes darted around the room. He barely looked at me. When our eyes met briefly, he looked away quickly. Guilt, shame. Jessica looked triumphant. Like a queen ascending her throne, a throne I had built for her. They said their vows. They kissed. The crowd cheered. I felt utterly disconnected, like a spectator watching a play about someone else's life. A play I had financed but had no role in. I clapped, my hands felt heavy, numb. The sound was hollow. The reception dragged on. The dinner was served, a 7-course meal. I couldn't taste it. The flavors felt like ash in my mouth. I watched as Jessica effortlessly charmed the guests, laughing brightly, moving through the room like a celebrity, ignoring me completely. Every laugh felt like a mockery. Every sip of champagne felt like theft. She and Michael were seated at the head table, a raised platform, separated from the crowd. From me, they were looking down on everyone, elevated, superior. I watched my son. He was performing the role of the happy groom, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. It was time for the toasts. Tradition. I had prepared a few words, simple things, about love, commitment, how proud I was of the man Michael had become. I wanted to talk about Mary, about the values we tried to instill in him. Values like respect, loyalty, humility, values he seemed to have forgotten. I picked up my glass. My hand was shaking slightly. I started the long walk toward the head table. It felt like walking the plank. The room was loud, the music swelling. As I approached the platform, the conversation seemed to dim. People noticed me, the handyman approaching the throne. Michael saw me. He smiled, a genuine smile. It momentarily broke through the facade. He started to stand up, but Jessica was faster. She rose gracefully, her expensive dress catching the light. Thousands of dollars of fabric. My money. She met me at the bottom of the steps. Her smile was bright, brittle, but her eyes as cold as the diamonds around her neck. Thomas, what are you doing? She asked. Her voice coated in a fake sweetness that grated on my nerves. It's time for the father of the groom's toast. Jessica, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I wanted to say a few words to my son. I tried to step around her. She blocked me, effortlessly. Oh, that won't be necessary, she said, blocking my path with her wide, extravagant skirt. We have a very tight schedule. Necessary. It's tradition, I argued, my voice low. The DJ is starting soon, she said, her smile tightening. It looked more like a grimace, We really can't afford any unplanned interruptions. Unplanned interruptions. My words, my love for my son, an interruption to the party. Besides, she leaned in slightly. She lowered her voice. But not enough. The nearby tables could hear. I saw them leaning in. Curious. Your little speech might bore everyone, she whispered loudly. We need to keep the energy up. Bore everyone. The humiliation burned. I felt a spark of defiance ignite in my chest. I wasn't going to be dismissed again. Not tonight. Not after everything. It's tradition, I insisted, my voice louder now. I'm his father. I looked up at Michael, pleading with my eyes. Speak up. Defend me. Acknowledge me. He was watching us, frozen. He didn't move to help me. He didn't speak up. He just watched, passive, weak. That silence was louder than Jessica's words. It confirmed everything. He had made his choice. He chose her. My heart shattered. The breaking point had arrived. Jessica's smile vanished. Instantly, she grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her manicured nails digging into my skin. Don't make a scene, Thomas, she hissed, her eyes flashing with anger. She pulled me forcefully, away from the crowd, toward the shadowed hallway leading to the kitchens. The sounds of the party faded behind us. The heavy door swung shut, sealing my fate. Once we were alone in the narrow, dimly lit hallway, the mask dropped completely. It smelled like garlic and cleaning supplies. The ugly reality behind the beautiful facade. The transformation was terrifying. Listen to me, you pathetic old man, she hissed. Her face inches from mine. The beautiful facade cracked, revealing the raw ugliness beneath. I was stunned. The sheer venom, the naked hatred in her voice. It paralyzed me. I've put up with you for a year, she snarled. I've tolerated your low-class manners, your grease-stained checks, and your pathetic attempts to fit into my world. My world, the world I built for her. The hypocrisy was staggering. But this is my wedding, she continued, her voice rising in anger. My day, you will not ruin it with your sentimental working-class drivel. Drivel, my toast to my son was drivel. Ruin it? My voice shook with disbelief and rising anger. Jessica, I paid for every single thing here. I gestured toward the ballroom, the lights, the music, the champagne. I paid for the house you're moving into, I reminded her, my voice growing stronger. The house you tried to steal from me. She flinched, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. She didn't think I knew about the deed transfer. I mortgaged my own life for this, I continued, the anger thawing the shock. She recovered quickly. The contempt returned. Yes, you did, she sneered, and we are very grateful. She laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Thank you for your service, she mocked. Service? Like I was hired help, dismissed after the job was done. Your duty is done, she said, cold and final. The checks have cleared. We don't need you anymore. We being... She said we. That meant Michael, too. He was complicit. The realization hit me harder than anything else. My son agreed with her. She took a step closer. Her perfume suffocated me. Michael doesn't need you, she said, twisting the knife. He has me now. He has a new life. A better life. A life I financed. A life I built from the ground up. And you, she looked me up and down with disgust, don't fit into it. She leaned in, her eyes burning with pure malice. Now get out of here. Go home to your sawdust and your memories. And don't come back. Don't come back. The finality of the words hung in the air. You're not welcome here, she finished. You are not part of our lives anymore. Go. Time stopped. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me, leaving me breathless. Not welcome, after everything I sacrificed to my comfort. My retirement, my peace of mind, all gone. For this, I looked at this woman, this stranger, who had stolen my son's heart, poisoned his mind. I saw nothing but pure, unadulterated greed. They didn't see a father. They saw a bank account, and now that the transaction was complete, they were discarding the packaging. A strange, profound calm settled over me. The hurt was there, deep and agonizing, a chasm opening in my soul. But the anger was clearer, sharper, colder. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. If this story has your heart racing, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Every click helps us keep uncovering stories that deserve to be heard. Because what happened next changed everything. It was time to show her what I really was. I wasn't just a handyman. I was a builder, and builders know exactly how to tear things down. I looked at her, and I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who finally understood the blueprint of the demolition that was about to happen. Okay, I said softly. My voice was calm, measured. Jessica looked surprised, disappointed. She expected a fight, tears, a scene. She wanted to see me broken. She didn't expect compliance. Good, she snapped, smoothing her dress. The arrogance returned instantly. Now leave before anyone sees you. Use the service exit. The service exit, like the trash. I will, I continued, my voice steady, clear. But I should warn you. She stopped, turned back, annoyed. Warn me about what? I'll take some others with me. Jessica scoffed, rolled her eyes in exaggerated exasperation. What, your little construction buddies? Go ahead. They don't fit the dress code anyway. She laughed again, cruel, dismissive. It will clear up some space for the people who actually matter. People who actually matter. She had no idea what those words truly meant. She turned and flounced back into the ballroom, the heavy door swinging shut behind her, leaving me alone in the quiet hallway. I took a deep breath. The air was cleaner out here, free of her toxic perfume. It was time to dismantle what I had built. Piece by piece, I walked back into the ballroom. But I didn't head for the exit. The room was buzzing again. The music playing, the guests, oblivious to the storm that was coming. I headed straight for David. He was still at the bar, nursing a scotch, watching the head table with a stormy expression. He must have sensed the tension. He knew me too well. David, I said, my voice low and urgent. He turned, looked at me. He saw something in my eyes he hadn't seen before. Cold determination. It's time. Signal the boys. David looked at me. He nodded slowly. He understood. Are you absolutely sure, Thomas? He asked, his voice grave. This is the nuclear option. There's no going back from this. She told me I wasn't welcome, I said, the words tasting like ash. She told me my checks cleared and my duty was done. I looked at the head table, at Michael, at Jessica. Let's show her what that really means. David downed his drink in one gulp. He set the glass down on the bar with a decisive click. He started moving through the crowd. I watched as he discreetly whispered to our employees. Mark the foreman, Kevin the master electrician, James the plumber, and several others I had invited. Men who had worked for me for decades, men who respected me, men who knew the meaning of loyalty. One by one, they nodded, put down their drinks, started gathering their wives. The exodus was beginning, but first I needed the leverage. I needed to cut the power source. While David organized the personnel, I had other, more critical business. I found Sarah, the wedding planner. She was hovering near the stage, stressed, clipboard in hand, arguing with the band leader about the playlist. Sarah, I interrupted, I need a word, immediately. Mr. Thomas, I'm in the middle of a crisis, she snapped, frazzled. The band is refusing to play the requested song, and the cake cutting is in 5 minutes. I'm leaving. I said flatly, Oh. Well, thank you for coming. Enjoy your evening. She dismissed me, turned back to the band leader. She didn't understand the gravity of the situation. You don't understand, Sarah, I said, my voice dropping low. As I am leaving, my financial authorization for this entire event is ending. I paused for effect, effective immediately. Sarah froze. The clipboard slipped from her fingers, clattered to the floor. The sound echoed in the space around us. I'm sorry, what did you just say? Her face rapidly paled. She looked sick. No more payments, I said, my voice cold and hard. Not for the band, not for the venue, not for the catering, not for you. Stops now. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope. I had prepared it this morning. A strange instinct, a shadow of doubt. It prompted me to write it. A formal, signed revocation of financial responsibility for the remainder of the event. You can't do that, Sarah stammered, horrified. The contracts, the deposits are paid, I explained patiently. But the remaining balance, the bulk of the cost, is due tonight, and the contracts for that balance are in my name. I handed her the envelope, and I am withdrawing my consent. Here is the written notice. Her hand trembled as she took it. The first domino had fallen. Just then, Michael spotted me. He started walking toward me quickly, a confused, panicked look on his face. "Dad, where are you going?" he asked, breathless. He saw the envelope in Sarah's hand. He saw the look on her face. "Jessica said you were feeling sick." The lie slipped easily from his lips, a testament to how quickly he adapted to her reality. I looked at my son, my heart breaking all over again. "I'm leaving, Michael," I said clearly. Jessica made it very clear I wasn't welcome. Michael paled. "Dad, don't. Please." He looked around nervously. People were watching. The tension was palpable. "Let's just get through the night. We can talk tomorrow." He tried to physically block me from talking to Sarah, caught between his wife's orders and the unfolding disaster. I gently but firmly moved him aside. "You made yours, son. Now you have to live with it." I turned back to Sarah. She looked like she was about to faint. At that exact moment, the demolition began in earnest. The music died. The band stopped playing mid-song. A discordant squeal of feedback echoed through the ballroom. A confused murmur spread through the room. Dancers froze. The lead singer, the one arguing with Sarah earlier, walked back to the microphone. He looked furious. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice amplified, dripping with annoyance, "we've hit a snag. It seems there's an issue with the payment authorization." The guests gasped, a collective intake of breath. "We apologize," the singer continued, not sounding sorry at all. "But we cannot continue playing until this matter is resolved with the event planner." The silence in the ballroom was absolute, heavy, oppressive. The embarrassment Jessica feared was happening. But it wasn't my doing, it was hers. I looked at the head table. Jessica was frozen, her mouth open in shock. Then she moved, fast. Jessica rushed toward the stage, her face furious. Abandoning all pretense of grace. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "Play the music." "I demand you play." "You are contracted for the entire evening." The band leader just shrugged, crossed his arms over his chest. "Talk to the planner, lady. We don't work for free." The authorization was pulled. Jessica turned on Sarah, screaming at her to fix the situation, creating a massive, ugly scene, the very thing she accused me of wanting to do. The aesthetic was definitely ruined. Now for the next phase. I walked toward the center of the room. I didn't need a microphone. I just needed eye contact. I looked toward the kitchen doors. The head caterer, Chef Pierre, was there, overseeing the preparation of the next course. I had used his services for years, for company events. He was expensive, but the best and fiercely loyal. We had an understanding. I caught his eye, gave a small, deliberate nod. Chef Pierre understood the signal immediately. A prearranged agreement we made when I signed the contract, ensuring I had final say over the service. He turned, barked an order in French to his staff. The kitchen immediately stopped plating. The food was next. Jessica's father, Mr. Smith, puffed up his chest. He saw what was happening. He confronted Chef Pierre as his staff began to retreat into the kitchen. "Where are you going?" Mr. Smith demanded, his face turning red. "The dessert course hasn't been served." "I demand you continue service." Chef Pierre looked down his nose at Mr. Smith, an expression of utter disdain. "Monsieur," he said coldly, "the service is terminated. My contract is with Mr. Thomas." He paused. "If Mr. Thomas withdraws, the food withdraws." Mr. Smith threatened to sue. Chef Pierre simply walked away, ignoring him completely. The arrogance of the rich meant nothing to him. Then I looked at the bar. The head bartender, Alex, was watching the commotion. alarm and confusion on his face. I signaled him, a slicing motion across the throat. He nodded back, understanding instantly. "Sorry, folks." "Alex," announced loudly, holding up his hands. "The bar is closed." A chorus of angry complaints erupted from the guests. The party was officially over. Finally, I looked toward the main entrance. The security team, hired through a firm I contracted regularly for my job sites. I gave the head of security the signal. A simple hand gesture we used on noisy construction sites. A complete and immediate shutdown. They immediately began organizing their exit strategy. The demolition accelerated rapidly. The beautiful ambiance vanished. The first thing the guests truly noticed, besides the sudden, oppressive silence and the lack of alcohol, was the lighting. The lights flickered. They didn't go out completely, but the beautiful, warm event lighting, the specialized uplighting that washed the walls in color, the pin spotting on the crystal chandeliers, suddenly went dark. The room shifted to a harsh fluorescent buzz. The basic venue service lights came on. Kevin, my master electrician, winked at me from the side panel near the hallway. He had rerouted the specialized power draw I had paid extra for, switched it back to the basic venue grid. At my signal, the magic was gone, replaced by the harsh glare of reality. It looked cheap. It looked tacky. It looked exactly how Jessica deserved. The venue manager, a stout man in an expensive tuxedo, burst through the doors, rushed towards Sarah. She was hyperventilating near the stage. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why did the lighting change?" "My office just notified me that the authorization for the electricity usage surcharge and the venue rental extension was revoked." The foundation was crumbling, but the real chaos started when the kitchen doors opened wide. Chef Pierre's staff began streaming out. A precise, organized line, but they weren't carrying more food. They were carrying crates, insulated bags, rolling carts, packing up the elaborate buffet, the remaining courses, the roast beef, the lobster tails, the mountains of shrimp. The guests watched in utter disbelief. The food vanished before their eyes. And then they brought out the cake. The towering, extravagant wedding cake. 6 tiers of perfection. Being whisked away toward the service elevators. Mrs. Smith, Jessica's mother, rushed toward the staff carrying the cake, her face a mask of horror. "Stop. You can't take that," she shrieked. "That's my daughter's cake. I forbid it." She tried to physically grab the cart, nearly knocking the cake over. A security guard intervened, gently but firmly pulling her away. "Ma'am," the guard said calmly, "this property belongs to the catering company until the service is complete. Please step aside." Mrs. Smith shrieked in frustration. Impotence, causing even more guests to stare in shock. It was a complete shutdown. No music, harsh lights, no alcohol. The food was gone. And then the final exodus. David stood by the main door. "All right, folks, let's move out," he called out, his voice booming in the silence. "Our work here is done. One by one, my employees, my friends, my crew, nearly 50 people in total, stood up and started walking toward the exit. They weren't just guests. They were the backbone of my company. The people who knew the meaning of loyalty and respect. They walked past the head table, their faces set in grim solidarity. As Mark, my foreman, walked past Michael, he stopped. Mark had known Michael since he was a baby, taught him how to fish. He looked at my son with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You used to be a good kid, Michael," Mark said. Loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Michael flinched. "Your mother," Mark continued, his voice thick with emotion, "would be ashamed of how you treated your father tonight." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Michael stared at the floor, unable to meet the eyes of the men who had watched him grow up, the men who had taught him how to swing a hammer. The room, once packed with over 200 people, suddenly felt vast and empty. The remaining guests, mostly Jessica's friends and family, were left sitting in the dimly lit, silent hall, staring at empty tables, the bare space where the cake had been. Jessica watched from the head table, her face a mask of disbelief and horror. The realization hit her like a freight train. the full magnitude of her actions crashing down upon her. These were the others I had mentioned. I hadn't just taken my friends. I hadn't just taken the money. I had taken the entire wedding with me. Her perfect day, her extravagant vision, her monument to excess, was in ruins. Stop! The scream echoed through the silent hall, primal, raw, filled with a desperate, impotent rage. It was the sound of entitlement meeting consequence. Jessica came running down from the platform, hitching up her expensive dress, stumbling in her heels. She was hysterical, her perfect makeup smeared by tears, her elaborate hair coming undone. Michael was right behind her, his face pale, bewildered, terrified. She reached me just as I was about to step at the door. "How could you?" she screamed, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Again, "How could you ruin my wedding? You selfish, petty, vindictive old man." She was sobbing, hysterical. "You monster." The silence in the room was absolute. Everyone remaining was watching, witnessing the spectacular collapse of her arrogance. I ignored her. I turned to Michael. "My son." "Michael," I said, my voice thick with emotion, the sadness finally breaking through the calm facade. "I love you. I always have." Tears stung my eyes. "I wanted today to be perfect for you," I continued. "I gave everything I had, everything I worked for to make it perfect." "Dad, I don't understand," Michael pleaded, his eyes wide with panic, the realization of his own complicity beginning to dawn on him. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at the chaos around him. "Please, fix it. Make it stop." "I can't fix this, son," I said, keeping my gaze locked on his. "I paid for everything. The wedding, the house, your future. I gave it all gladly, hoping I was gaining a daughter, hoping we were strengthening our family." I looked at Jessica. She was still sputtering with rage and disbelief. "But she made it very clear," I said, my voice ringing with clarity. "She didn't want a family. She wanted a transaction." I looked back at Michael, and when she told me I wasn't welcome, that I should get out and never come back, that my duty was done, and the checks had cleared, I paused, letting the weight of her words hang in the air, ensuring everyone understood the cruelty, the finality of her dismissal. The transaction became void. Jessica let out another piercing scream. Not a word, just a sound of pure, unadulterated fury and defeat. "Fix it," she shrieked, stamping her foot like a toddler. "You have to fix it."
Tell them to bring everything back.
She turned to me, her eyes wild. Pay them double? You wanted me gone." "Jessica," I said, my voice cold and final. "You wanted a perfect aesthetic." I looked around the empty, silent, harshly lit room. "Enjoy your empty room. Enjoy the life you deserve." I turned and walked out the door. David and the rest of my crew followed me into the cool night air. The silence of the parking lot was a blessed relief. As we stood by our trucks, the adrenaline began to fade. The weight of what had just happened settled over me. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. I just felt incredibly tired and profoundly sad. I had demolished the wedding, but I had also lost my son. David clapped me on the back, his hand heavy and reassuring. "Well, Thomas," he said, a grim smile on his face. "You always did know how to handle a demolition." We didn't go home. We went to a small, greasy diner down the street, the kind with fluorescent lights that buzzed and strong, hot coffee. I bought everyone dinner. We sat there for hours, crammed into booths, laughing, telling stories, surrounded by real friendship, unwavering loyalty. Chef Pierre and his team even showed up, bringing some of the food they had reclaimed from the reception. We ate lobster tails and prime rib off paper plates. We drank cheap beer and good coffee. It was the best meal I had in years. It was the best reception I could have asked for, surrounded by the people who actually mattered. I heard later about the aftermath inside the venue. It was pure chaos. Jessica's parents, Smiths, tried to pay the vendors to restart the service, but the remaining balances were astronomical, far beyond their means. Chef Pierre refused, on principle. The band had already packed up and left. The remaining guests, hungry, angry, and embarrassed, left quickly. The story of the disastrous wedding, the wedding that evaporated in 10 minutes, spread through the city's social circles like wildfire. Jessica spent the rest of the night alternating between screaming at Michael and crying hysterically. She blamed him for his father's actions. She cried about her ruined reputation. The collapse of her perfect image, the glamorous facade was shattered. The ugly reality exposed. The fallout for Michael and Jessica was swift and brutal. The humiliation, the crushing financial burden, the reality that the bank account me was closed. Their marriage, built on a foundation of superficiality and greed, crumbled almost instantly. They never even made it to the honeymoon. The house deal fell through. Thanks to Mr. Evans, my name was clear of the deed. The silence from Michael was deafening. Weeks turned into months. I hadn't spoken to him since that night. I figured he needed time to process the wreckage of his life, to see the truth without the fog of his infatuation. I focused on my work, trying to fill the void left by the betrayal. The construction business boomed, ironically. It seemed people appreciated integrity. The man who refused to be walked on. I managed to replace the equipment I had sold, started paying down the second mortgage. Thanks to the influx of new contracts, but the emptiness in my house, the silence where Michael's laughter used to be, was a constant, dull ache. I missed my son, but I didn't miss the disrespect. I wondered if he would ever understand, if he would ever come back. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, about 6 months after the wedding, I was sitting in my office at the construction yard, reviewing blueprints. The door opened. Michael stood there. He looked different, older, thinner, the youthful arrogance. The expensive clothes Jessica had dressed him in were gone, replaced by a weary sadness. Simple jeans and a t-shirt. He was holding 2 large, worn suitcases. "Dad," he said quietly, his voice hoarse. "Michael," I replied, setting down my pen. I didn't stand up. I waited. He shifted his weight awkwardly, his eyes taking in the familiar surroundings. The office, where he had spent countless hours as a boy. "Can I talk to you?" I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat down, staring at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words and shared pain. "The annulment was finalized yesterday," he finally said, his voice rough. "She claimed I tricked her into the marriage, that I misrepresented your financial situation. I wasn't surprised. The irony was staggering. I'm sorry it came to that," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I never wanted my son to be unhappy. "I'm not," he said firmly, looking up at me. His eyes were clear. For the first time in a long time. It was the biggest mistake of my life. He took a deep breath. She couldn't handle the reality. The debts from the wedding vendors. The fact that we lost the big house. They had lost the deposit. My money, gone. "She blamed me," Michael continued. "She said I should have stopped you. That I should have chosen her, no matter what." He laughed humorlessly. A dry, painful sound. "I did choose her, Dad," he admitted, his voice thick with shame. "That was the problem. I chose her over you, over my own values, over everything you taught me." He looked me straight in the eye. I was weak, his eyes filled with remorse. Tears spilled down his cheeks. "I was so wrong, Dad. I was so caught up in the fantasy she created," he confessed, "and trying to be the man she wanted, that I forgot who I was." He took a shaky breath. "I forgot I was your son." "Respect, Michael," I said simply. "It always comes down to respect." "Yes," he nodded, wiping his eyes. "And I had none. Not for you, not for your sacrifices, not even for myself. I let her treat you like dirt," he said, the words agonizing. "I let her humiliate you, and I am so deeply ashamed." He stood up, pacing the small office. "When I think about what you gave up for me, the savings, the mortgage, and how I threw it all back in your face." He stopped, looked at me with raw honesty. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, Dad. I know I have to earn your trust back. It might take years, but I needed you to know that I see clearly now. I see her for what she is, and I see myself for what I became." He looked around the office, at the pictures of the buildings we had built, the legacy of hard work and integrity. I sold the expensive cars she made me buy, he said. I'm working 2 jobs to pay off the debts she left me with, and I was wondering if you had any room here. He paused, vulnerable, even just sweeping the floors, hauling lumber. He looked down at his hands. They were soft, uncalloused. I need to start over, from the ground up. I watched him. This young man trying to find his way back from the brink. Forgiveness wasn't easy. The pain of that night was still a fresh wound, a scar that would always remain. But he was Mary's son. He was my son. I picked up my pen again, looked back at the blueprints. The foreman position is filled, I said, keeping my voice neutral. But we could use an extra hand on the downtown site. I looked up at him. It's hard work, long hours, dirty. He stared at me, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. I'd like that, Dad. Be here at 6 a.m., I said. And Michael? Yes, Dad. Don't be late. We have a foundation to pour. A small, genuine smile touched his lips. For the first time. Yes, sir. He walked out, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I looked at the picture of Mary on my desk. I realized then that I hadn't lost everything. I might have lost the illusion of a perfect family and a significant amount of money. But I had regained my dignity, and more importantly, I had regained my son. Family, I realized, is like building a house. If the foundation is cracked, built on greed and disrespect, the whole structure will eventually collapse under its own weight. But if it's built on love, respect, and loyalty, it can withstand anything. As I turned back to my blueprints, I knew we would rebuild. Because that's what we do. We build things to last. Thanks for listening. Please rate our story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe. Your support means a lot, because your time matters.